We have a conference championship weekend to run through. Two wild upsets, two wild dominations. There are only four teams getting into the college football playoff. Let's go. It's the number one college football show. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Thank you for watching on the Fox Sports app, on YouTube, listening wherever you get your podcast. I am in Indianapolis, where we just got done watching an utter domination by the Michigan Wolverines in the Big Ten Championship. And that is a great place to start this wild and fun conference championship weekend. Number 2 Michigan knocked off unranked Purdue 43-22 in Purdue's first trip ever to the Big Ten Championship. Michigan officially playing the game without running back Blake Corum, who went under season-ending knee surgery on Friday, which meant that if we didn't already know it was the Donovan Edwards show, that it was the Donovan Edwards show, and my man absolutely showed out. 47 carries and 401 yards, 3 tutties in Blake Corum's absence, going back to the game in Columbus, where he had a breakout performance, having 21 carries, 216 yards, and long TDs after long TD. In this game, I thought it was really interesting that Michigan did what we know Michigan to do, which is to start very slowly and finish extremely fast. As a matter of fact, they led Purdue 14-13 at half. And Aiden O'Connell had even said in the post-game press conference, we felt pretty good about where we were at Lucas Oil Stadium, believing we could come out and give Michigan a game. When Donovan Edwards said, I don't think so, sir. I think that I'm going to break off long run after long run, and I'm going to body shot you until such a time as you show me your chin, and then we're going to knock you on the floor. And for Jim Harbaugh, this has to be just one of the coolest sensations to feel as a head coach, because it's not just that his team dominated, it's that his team dominated while Purdue moved the ball so well in the second half, but could not score. We're talking about Aiden O'Connell throwing for over 450 yards in this game, but Purdue only producing 22 points in this game. Will Johnson, cornerback at Michigan, had not one, but 2 massive interceptions, both in the second half. The first one was like, my goodness, is this not the best cornerback, maybe the best defender for the Michigan Wolverines on this team? But my goodness, like, I'm wondering also, was he sitting on a route? Because that second interception he had was fantastic, jumping a slant route and absolutely giving the deuces to Purdue because the game was over after he made that pick. Jim Harbaugh completes his first undefeated season as head coach of the Michigan Wolverines and leads Michigan to their first 13-0 start in program history. And Wolverines have been playing college football since the 19th century. Not too shabby for Jim Harbaugh, a man that could not get over the hump of Ohio State, and then has done it twice in 2 years, won Big Ten championships, and is a shoo-in for the college football playoff for the second year in a row. And this time with 2 underclassmen in the backfield, J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, and obviously Donovan Edwards at tailback. Really excited to see what they do in the college football playoff. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit, but we got to move from the Big Ten championship game to the Big 12 championship game, which was a thriller. I had my eyes glued to this one for the entirety of the game. Number 10 Kansas State upsets number 3 Texas Christian 31-28 in overtime. Again, fantastic game. Texas Christian went into half trailing Kansas State by 4, which for TCU is nothing new. They were in the same situation most of the time this season and came back to win against Kansas State 38-28 in the second half, but not this time. Kansas State played outstanding football on both sides. Deuce Vaughn led the way with 26 carries, 130 yards, and a TD. But the Kansas State defense absolutely coming up big for defensive coordinator Joe Klanderman. As a matter of fact, they are able to force overtime by getting Texas Christian into 3rd and goal, 4th and goal situations and hold firm, stop them from scoring what would have been a score that could have won the game for Texas Christian, to force that overtime, or excuse me, in overtime, and then get the ball back to kick their field goal. Kansas State's defense was outstanding. I can't say enough good things about how they played against a really tough and resilient Texas Christian team. It did, however, take Kansas State overtime to beat TCU, and that is going to be important as for the next 12 hours. That's what we're going to be discussing. Is Texas Christian good enough to be in the college football playoff? We will get to that a little bit further in the show, but I also just want to give it up to Kansas State because they won their first Big 12 championship since 2012. How long ago was that? The offensive coordinator at Kansas State is Colin Klein. He was the quarterback and captain at Kansas State the last time the Wildcats won the Big 12 title. And my goodness, made a berth in the Fiesta Bowl where they got to play against Oregon. Great time for what I saw in, well, what I know of Optimus Klein and what I know of what he's absolutely been able to do against one, well, Texas Christian team that was undefeated and unscathed, and then to turn Will Howard into an absolute winner as we are continuing to see what Kansas State is capable of. I can't wait to see them in their New Year's Six bowl game. Max Duggan also outstanding in this game. He put the team on his back, especially in the second half, to send the game into OT. He had 95 rush yards on TCU's last TD drive alone. This is a man who was converting 2nd and 20s, converting 3rd and long with his legs. I'm familiar with this because he was doing a bunch of this actually in 2019 against one Oklahoma. When we were all talking about Jalen Hurts, it was Max Duggan that was really coming into form. Did not start the game didn't start the season as a starter, but ended as a starter when we all know that Chandler Morris is back there, and what a job Garrett Riley in particular has done as the offensive coordinator at Texas Christian. I think it's going to be between him and Jesse Minter for the Broyles Award. Both guys deserve it. I can't wait to see who they choose. Full credit to Texas Christian and the kind of performance they put on this year. Remember, they were picked to finish 7th in their own conference, and now they are staring at looking at really good chance to be in the college football playoff for the first time in their history. One question we do all have, and I want to hear some more talk about, is why didn't Sonny Dykes give the ball to Max Duggan on 4th and goal in overtime after he had demonstrated he was willing to bleed, hurt, do whatever was in his power to go and get a W for Texas Christian? And for you to give that ball to Kendre Miller instead of Max Duggan, it's kind of like, for me, the Super Bowl in which Pete Carroll just did not decide to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch. We're looking at this the same way. Texas Christian could have had a Big 12 championship to go along with their 12-0 start to the season, but 12-1 will have to do. Does TCU stay at number 3 in the college football playoff rankings after losing in the Big 12 championship game? It's a very interesting question. I'm going to attack that further on in the show, but I want to touch on, before we get to the college football playoff, the rest of our outstanding conference championship weekend. SEC Championship was ho-hum because most of us felt like Georgia was going to win the SEC Championship, and they did not let us down. Number 1, Georgia stomped out number 14, LSU, 50-30. Wacky start to the SEC Championship game. Of course, LSU's special teams let them down once again. And, shout out to Brian Kelly, who decided to bring one guy with him from Notre Dame, and that happened to be a special teams coach. Now we're looking at Brian Pulling and going, yo, dog, I don't know if it's going to work out for next year, because you can't be doing what y'all was doing against the Georgia Bulldogs and expect to come out there anything like a win. All right, so Georgia blocks the LSU field goal, and you can see that being run back right now on the screen if you are watching on the YouTubes. But it was that kind of game for Georgia, and frankly, that kind of game for LSU. Now, LSU's Jaden Daniels went out late. So did Georgia's Ladd McConkey, wide receiver with a head injury to the tent in the first half. Jaden Daniels just didn't look right going into halftime. Then Garrett Nussmeier comes out the second half, and Garrett Nussmeier is absolutely slinging it. Now, before I got to Fox, one of the things that I would do is search out the 4- and 5-star recruits that were committed or about to commit to where they were going to go and ask them about their decisions to do this, right? So I get to talk to Garrett Nussmeier on the YouTube channel, and I get to ask a story about, him and his dad. His dad is the quarterback's coach for the Dallas Cowboys and famously was an offensive coordinator for Nick Saban at Alabama. And I'm going, hey, dog, you don't seem to have a check down in your game. He said, RJ, the good Lord gave me a cannon. I'm gonna use it, dude. And that's what you saw. He came out absolutely going, no, we're down. What do we do when we're down? As the psychotherapist once asked, we run 4 verticals. We go 9-9-9 all the way down the field. He was loading up, hunting after Georgia's secondary, and I really enjoyed that, as he and Malik Neighbors seemed to have a really good kinship. I believe Malik had 5 catches for over 100 yards in this game. And Garrett Nussmeier absolutely came out slinging it and looked great. He is the future for LSU. I'm getting really giddy at the prospect of watching what he might be able to do in 2023. Hate that Jaden Daniels had to go out in this way, but we would be remiss if we didn't say without Jaden Daniels, LSU is not in a position to play for a conference championship in 2022. It's just that. That man just does not throw the ball to the other team. And I can't say enough good things about how hard that is to do while also throwing the ball down the field. Jaden Daniels is an outstanding quarterback. Also, Georgia's showing no mercy in this game because, well, we always ask this question, when does Georgia show up? They show up in the games with teams that have numbers next to their names, right? So LSU got a number next to their name, so they decide to drop 50 on them, just so everybody understands going into college football playoff selection Sunday, we are the number 1 team in the country. Can anyone beat Georgia for the national championship? I have an answer for this. Again, we're going to wait until the end of the show to attack all of this as it relates to the college football playoff. Want to touch on the Pac-12 Championship, which was played on Friday night. Number 11 Utah upsets number 4 USC 47-24 to win the Pac-12 title for the second year and to double up Lincoln Riley in the same year, okay? Utah beat USC again and also ruined the college football playoff chance for the Pac-12 again. The Pac-12 has not had a college football playoff invitee since 2016, and that was so long ago that the head coach of that team at Washington, Chris Peterson, he works at Fox now, all right? That's what it is, the Pac-12. They are becoming a joke unto themselves because they will cannibalize themselves and keep each other out of the Pac-12 championship. But I got to say, if you are a Pac-12 member after 2024, you probably feel some kind of way about USC perhaps being the team to not only win your league, but get into the college football playoff, as they and UCLA are slated to leave the Pac-12 to join the vaunted Big Ten. Kyle Whittingham is the most underrated coach in college football. He led the Utah Utes to an undefeated season in 2008. They stomped out Alabama, and we didn't give them a national championship then. We continue to say, hey, the Pac-12 ain't nobody, and Utah continued to say, oh, except when we play, and we son this league. That includes USC. As a matter of fact, when Lincoln Riley decided to go to USC, one of the things that I had postulated is he must think that this league is weak. And if you are the kind that think this league is weak, you would look at Kyle Whittingham and Utah and say, no, we can go beat them. And Kyle Whittingham is not that type. Kyle Whittingham has a barrel chest, and he wants to win in the trenches, and they want to absolutely bloody your nose. And if you needed one image to know what this game was like to watch Utah beat up on USC, just know that a USC defender leveled Cam Rising, and Cam Rising popped up with his helmet off, smiled, and ran over the sideline. Because Cam Rising, football guy. That is the kind of athlete that has to be at Utah for you to play at Utah. Kyle Whittingham ain't giving out no easy wins. You better get it. Matter of fact, running back Jaquindon Jackson comes from Duncanville, where he played quarterback and was going to play quarterback at Texas. He's a running back at Utah, running over people. So that's one former quarterback and a quarterback who ain't afraid of getting popped in the mouth. That ought to terrify you if you are playing them in the Rose Bowl, and that might be Penn State. That's going to be outstanding, as two teams that really want to win the trenches have outstanding tailbacks. Can't wait to see if, when, how that game happens. Cam Rising 22 of 34, 310 yards, 3 TDs. The Caleb Williams injury really did change the game, and frankly, I think changed the Heisman race. It was a tale of two halves. How did this affect him in the second half? Well, the man couldn't move. And to know about Caleb Williams is to know that his elusiveness is what makes him special. There have been comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, to Kyler Murray, to Johnny Manziel. Fact of the matter is, the play is broken down and it's dead. And not only does he revive it, he turns it into a positive game and sometimes a TD. And then his attitude is one in which has become, well, one we like to see. If you know what I'm talking about, just look at his nails and how they're painted for each game, and we can go from there, and you can go see that. But this is also really an outstanding courtesy to the Ohio State Buckeyes, to which I'm going to let Kyle Whittingham tell you what he had to say to Ryan Day.
You know, I got a feeling, Kyle, in Columbus, Ohio, you're not going to have to pay for a meal.
Coach Day, you're welcome.
And that is outstanding from Kyle Whittingham. Frankly, I didn't know that Kyle Whittingham had that kind of wit with him right away. But Also, Utah had the last laugh. My goodness, this tweet is amazing. Somebody needs a raise on the social team at Utah football, because if you could not have the laugh with this one, even if you're a USC fan, I'm just going to assume that nothing to you is ever funny or fun. And I'm in college football for funny and fun. Okay, now quickly before we get into what does this all mean for the college football playoff, number 9, Clemson stomped out number 23, North Carolina, 39-10, and to win the ACC title game and to get this spot in the New Year's Six Bowl. Cade Klubnik looks like the quarterback of the future. He was outstanding, 300 passing yards, came in relief of DJ Uiagalelei, won ACC Championship game MVP. For us, it's a matter of, is DJ going to stay or is he going to enter the portal? If he enters the portal, we'll talk about it when he does. But Cade Klubnik, outstanding job for you, and way to finish this season for the Clemson Tigers. All right, so what does all of this mean for the college football playoff? Well, you'll go check foxsports.com where you'll see my top 25 rankings are updated. And I'll tell you, you can see right there how I have the teams 1 through 25, but I'm just going to go through these questions that I know are burning for me and burning for you. Now that TCU and USC lost in their conference championship games, who gets in? Not USC. You can't lose 47-24 to Utah and expect us to say, oh yeah, we're going to let you in without a Pac-12 championship after you lost twice to a team that got beat down by Florida. And frankly, doesn't look like a team that belongs in the college football playoff themselves, all right? USC is going to be out. 11 wins. They're going to play in a nice bowl game, maybe the Alamo Bowl, which would be some sort of schadenfreude for some Oklahoma fans, I'm sure, if that's where Lincoln Riley is headed for this bowl season. But we'll talk about that when it happens. For Texas Christian, I think they're in, man. I think they're in because they're the best of the rest. Like, you're looking at resumes and you're looking at who played in what. They played in their conference championship. They were 12-0. They have 5 ranked wins against AP top 25 opponents. Only them in Tennessee got that. Tennessee's got one more loss than TCU. I think TCU is going to get the respect they were not given in 2014 and slide into the top 4. We'll talk about where in just a second here. TCU stays in, right? But what seed? I think that the committee is going to look at how Texas Christian lost to a Kansas State team that is not anywhere near playing for a playoff, whose losses are to, yes, Texas Christian, but also Texas and Tulane, and say, I'm going to look at this team, Ohio State, that's got 11 wins, whose only loss is to the number 2 and undefeated team in the country, and say, hey, remember when we did this in 2017 with Alabama and Georgia, where we decided that the 4 best teams need to get in, that conference championships don't matter, that it doesn't really matter to us, that you don't even win your division. We just matter who did you play and how did you lose and how did that team do the rest of the way. It's really difficult to look at Ohio State's resume, going on the road, for instance, against Penn State and handing them one of 2 L's they got, the other one they got from Michigan when Penn State traveled to the Big House, right? And say that Ohio State is not one of the 4 best teams in college football, if not one of the 3 best teams in college football, right? So I think Ohio State not only takes USC's spot, I think they take TCU's spot. TCU goes to 4, Ohio State goes to 3, Michigan goes to 2, and of course, Georgia stays at 1, or I should say Michigan stays at 2. Alabama, for me, is on the outside looking in. Nick Saban made the case for his team during halftime of the Big Ten championship game, for which I'm just going to let you listen to how he laid out his case for the Tide getting into the playoff.
And what I would say to the committee or anyone else is if we played any of these teams that are on the edge or getting in, would we be the underdog or would we be the favorite? And I think if you can answer that question and the goal is to get the best teams in, then you would say they belong in there.
Yeah, dog. So you want us to look at you and say, hey, you beat an Ole Miss team that lost the Egg Bowl to Mississippi State. Cool. You scheduled an FCS Austin P and want us to look the other way, but we ain't. And then you beat up on an Auburn team that ain't got no head coach. Yeah, man. No. What do you think this is? All right. Even if I believe your cockamamie argument, you lost to Tennessee in Knoxville. And sorry for you, but they lost to South Carolina. And South Carolina ain't no college football playoff team. All right, dog. And then you lose to LSU. And that wouldn't be so bad because LSU's playing in the, conference championship game if LSU ain't going to lose to 5-7 Texas A&M. Nah, man. Nick Saban knows his team does not deserve or belong in the college football playoff this year. And shout out to Coach Meyer, who just kind of called him out because he knows how these things go, going, hey, I'm glad that I can pull you away from your recruiting dinner to go talk on Fox about how your team should be in the college football playoff. You saw this when Nick decided to chuckle at Urban know what the game is and knowing what you need to do. But Nick Saban, I got to give him credit, man. At least he's going to stand on the soapbox for his kids, trying to tell us, you know what, Bryce Young wasn't really healthy, so we didn't play him against Texas A&M. And you damn near lost to him, too. I'm just saying. I can't have it both ways. Take this New Year's Six Bowl berth and be happy, you know? You won 10 games again. That's not too shabby, even in a place like Tuscaloosa. All right, on the way out, as we were loading up the show, the news became official. Deion Sanders is the new head coach at Colorado. I wrote about this at some length on foxsports.com. You can go read about my thoughts there about what this means for the sport, what this means for Colorado, what this means for the Pac-12, what this means for Coach Prime. And we will discuss this later on in the week when we do our coaching carousel show and our transfer portal show as we get ready for bowl season. But I'm just going to leave you with these thoughts, right? The first thing is this is a natural step for Deion Sanders. I didn't think that Colorado was the job he should take, because I think that Colorado is, quite frankly, a job that is beneath a man of his talent and caliber. He could have just stayed at Jackson State. But going to a Power 5 job, having the resources that a place like Colorado will allow, is going to allow Deion Sanders to do more than he could at Jackson State. I'll put it this way. He led Jackson State to back-to-back SWAC championships in their first 12-0 season in school history amid a pandemic, amid a statewide water crisis, and at an underfunded HBCU program. He turned not just a winner, but a nationally prominent program. You know where Jackson State is. You know what Jackson State is because of what Deion Sanders has done just since taking the job in September of 2020. All right. Next thing to say here is that Lincoln Riley's on his way out, going to the Big Ten. The Pac-12 was going to get raided, if not forced to dissolve. That's the conversation before the season started. And now look at them. Not only is Utah defending them against what they think is a team that or a program that is leaving them, but they are adding Deion Sanders to the mix for the last year with Lincoln Riley in the mix and saying, yeah, we expect to keep Deion Sanders for the next couple of years. And if nothing else, Colorado is now must-see television because Prime is must-see television. He's going to recruit his behind off because you know that he already got the #1 recruit in the class of 22 to come to an FCS program in Jackson, Mississippi, y'all. You can assume, or at least I would, that his son Shedeur Sanders would follow him to Colorado to finish his degree. And it's not anything to say that that man has outstanding NIL deals and gets to call Tom Brady on line one anytime he needs something. What I'm telling you is, if athletic director Rick George is going to let primetime be primetime, expect us to be over there in primetime watching what Colorado does each and every week, and starting with week 1, because they will face a Texas Christian team that at the very worst will finish with one of the top 5 programs in college football and probably start in the top 10 next year. And then, oh yeah, they play Nebraska and Matt Rule the next week before jumping in to their Pac-12 regular season slate. It's a good time to be a Buffalo. Joel Klatt, you are welcome, sir. You are welcome. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of the #1 college football show. We will be back right here live just after the end of the Selection Sunday show when we find out who the college football playoff teams are. We'll talk about them right here as soon as we know. Get into some New Year's Six Bowl berth. We have some great shows planned for you in the rest of the week. My thanks as always to my intrepid lead producer, Tyler Wojak. That is Ava Ye on our camera today. That's Chaz Boulay directing for us. Our senior producer, Catherine Donnelly, holding it down. Our social media maven is Javion Duncan. My thanks to Gabe Gross-Sable, who takes us live. And I will see y'all in a few hours. Deuces.